Robert, thank you for sitting down and talking to me. This has been a really pivotal day in your campaign and your life, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a difficult day in many respects, but I feel like I'm on the right path.
You had, I think, close to, if not over 1 million people on your live stream for your press conference, and for anybody that is under a rock, you have suspended your campaign. You haven't dropped out of the campaign, you've suspended your campaign. How difficult was this decision?
It was difficult. I mean, all of us, the people, kind of the inner circle who were involved in the decision, I think everybody in that circle went back, did 180-degree turns maybe 15 times in the last 2 weeks trying to figure out what we can do. But ultimately, it was clear to me that because of the media censorship, because I was not going to be allowed on a debating stage, that I didn't really have a path to victory. So my choice was, am I going to spend the next 77 days, rallying the troops and getting more money out of the donors without being able to offer them a path to victory? And I think that would have sucked my soul out. And then, I had this interesting series of meetings with President Trump, in which he really surprised me by strongly endorsing the mission for his presidency, saying that he wanted his legacy to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. And that's been my central mission for the past 20 years, is addressing that issue. What's happening to our kids? We have the sickest children in the world. When I was a kid, about 6% of American children had chronic disease. Today, it's 60%. And these are in basically major categories like neurological illnesses, which is ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and juvenile diabetes, and then the allergic diseases like peanut allergies and food allergies and eczema, and all of these appeared in the mid-1980s. Oh, I never saw anybody with any of these diseases when I was a kid.
Well, I grew up in the 50s, and these weren't issues.
They weren't issues. You didn't know anybody who had diabetes. You certainly did not know anybody who had autism. And now
or peanut allergies.
Or peanut allergies. In fact, Congress asked the EPA, tell us what year these epidemics began. EPA scientists came back and said it's a red line, 1985. That gives us a hint about the culprits, because we know it's not a genetic injury. Genes don't cause epidemics. They may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental exposure, an environmental toxin. And so something happened in our kids around at that time, and it's probably a lot of different exposures. The collapse of our food system, the industrialization of our food system, et cetera.
You and I have talked before, and I've learned so much about you, and so how deeply convicted you are about these things. And I tried to help millions of others that might not know how deeply convicted you are. I think we made a lot of progress in that regard. And I know that you're deciding to run and conducting this campaign came at a very high price to you personally, family-wise, professionally. And now as we sit here, I have to ask you, if you knew then what you know now, would you have done this?
Yeah, I would have. I mean, I think it's been costly to me and it's been costly to my family, but I think I've advanced the issues in a way that is going to be helpful to people over the long run. The major issues that I've been talking about, the censorship, the addiction to war, particularly the Ukraine war, and then most of all the chronic disease epidemic. And I think, it gave me a platform to talk about those issues, and a lot more people are aware of them now, and a lot more people are, it's part of the national conversation, which it was not 16 months ago.
Yeah, and I think people on the outside looking in don't realize what a sacrifice it is to make the decision you made. I mean, it's what, a 16-hour day is like a light day. It's like, well, why get dressed if you're only going to do 16 hours, right? And it's day after day after day. and then you decide to do what you did today. Why now? Was there a reason you did it today instead of 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks down the road?
It was just a confluence of events. I actually would have rather done it a little later. You know, I finished writing my speech today at 11:10, and the press conference started at 11, and I was 30 minutes away. So I was 45 minutes late for the conference because, you know, I had only had really 24 hours to write my statement. And so I would have preferred to do it under a more relaxed regimen, but
Well, you work well under pressure, though.
I work well. We have a team that works well under pressure, and President Trump's staff had a whole series of other needs, and you know, we basically, you know, we coalesced around their schedule.
And I was with President Trump this morning, interviewed him in Las Vegas, and then I headed this way. He's not far behind me. And one of the things that I asked him was about you and what you were going to have to say today. And he had a comment about that for the record, and I wanted to share it with you and get your comments about that. RFK Jr. has offered his support to you and your campaign. How do you feel about that?
I'm very honored by it. He's a very smart guy, a different kind of a guy, but very smart, loves our country, has some, I think, very good views on a lot of different things. And I've known him for a long time. We've been somewhat friendly, actually. And I think he's going to be a great asset. I think he adds a lot to the election. He's got a good following, tremendous following. I think he adds a lot to the election, and I think he adds a lot to if we win. I mean, he's got some very interesting ideas and good ideas. I think he'll be a fantastic and influential person in terms of getting this country back on track. I think if we win, I think he can be very valuable to the country, and I think he can also help us build up the margins.
Will he have a role in your administration? He's a very experienced trial lawyer.
He is.
He's tried a lot of large cases, so, and a lot of it environmental. So I thought, you know, he might play a role environmentally. He might play a role as Attorney General. There's a lot of things he could offer to the administration.
That's true. That's true. No, he's a very smart guy, and
but you welcome him.
I do.
You welcome his support.
Well, number one, I've known him a long time, and I've always had a good relationship. I mean, we're sort of on opposite sides of some issues, but I've always had a good relationship with him, and I'm very honored by his support.
Well, I've spoken to him about you in the past, and he's always spoken of you with a great deal of respect. Even though you guys have been campaigning against each other, he's always spoken of you with a great deal of respect. What's your reaction to his comments?
You know, I think he's accurate. We've known each other for a long time. In fact, I've litigated against him. I've sued him a couple of times on golf courses that he was building, or he's trying to build up in the New York State reservoir watershed, and I was suing to keep them from being built. But even during that time when I was litigating against him, he ended up giving me a ride to Florida on his plane. So, and we were friendly, and you know, we had a great time and a lot of laughs. He's a very congenial, amiable, interesting guy, and very warm.
Do you foresee pushing your agenda forward, maybe as part of that administration? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that. We talked about his commitment to chronic disease. It's one of the things that brought us together. A couple of hours after the assassination attempt, Phil, I got a call from Callie Means, who's kind of the leading advocate in the country against chronic disease and against processed food, which is really poisoning our children. He's been advising me for a long time and consulting with me. And he called me that night and he said that he was also advising President Trump on this issue, which made me happy that President Trump even, you know, knew about this issue. And he asked if I'd be willing to talk to President Trump, and I said yes. And President Trump then called me a little while later. And then we ended up meeting with each other the following day and then doing a series of meetings. And a lot of that time we spent talking about the Ukraine war, about dismantling this addiction that we have to foreign wars. but also talking about the chronic disease epidemic. And President Trump said that he wanted that as his legacy to solve it. So, I'll do anything that I can to make sure that happens.